Donald Trump spent years blasting Democrats as radical socialists. But here's the truth. Trump himself is quietly building the most socialist economic plan America has ever seen. We're talking about government takeovers of private companies, taxpayer-funded bailouts, and even profit-sharing deals with corporations. And it's all being sold under the banner of MAGA. Legal expert Michael Popok calls it Marxist MAGA. And once you hear the details, you'll understand why. Trump wanted to launch a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, a giant government-controlled pool of money modeled after Saudi Arabia's $900 billion PIF. Think about that. The so-called champion of free markets wanted America's government to own big pieces of private companies. And now, with loyalists like Howard Lutnick and Pete Hegseth in his cabinet, that plan is being dusted off and put into motion. Let's start with Intel. America already gave Intel billions through the CHIPS Act to boost domestic chip making. But Trump wasn't satisfied. Reports show he wanted to funnel leftover CHIPS money straight into Intel's pockets. Not as a loan, but in exchange for the government taking an actual ownership stake in the company. That's not free market capitalism. That's Washington playing venture capitalist with your tax dollars. And if Intel fails? Guess who eats the loss? You, the taxpayer. Then comes NVIDIA. Under Trump's deal, NVIDIA gets to sell advanced chips to China, despite national security concerns. But in return, NVIDIA has to hand over 15% of its profits to the U.S. government. That's not regulation. That's a shakedown. The U.S. government becoming both regulator and business partner. Imagine the conflict of interest. If you're profiting off NVIDIA sales, are you really going to restrict those sales to protect national security? Of course not. Next, U.S. Steel. Trump greenlit its takeover by Japan's Nippon Steel. But instead of blocking foreign ownership, Trump cut a deal. The U.S. government gets a so-called golden share. That means veto power over certain decisions inside the company. Think about the hypocrisy. Trump built his entire brand on America first. Yet he sold off a core piece of American steel to a foreign corporation, while giving Washington bureaucrats a seat at the table. And it doesn't stop there. Pete Hegseth's Department of Defense has already bought a 15% stake in MP Materials Corp., one of the only rare earth mining companies in America. Cost to taxpayers? Nearly $400 million. Sure, it's wrapped in the language of national security, but the pattern is clear. The Trump government isn't just regulating industries, it's buying pieces of them outright. Let's pause and be clear. Sovereign wealth funds can work in certain countries, but in America, this is a recipe for corruption. It crowds out private investors who don't want to compete with Uncle Sam. It risks billions in taxpayer losses if these companies fail. It creates a massive conflict of interest, where the government profits from companies it's supposed to regulate. And worst of all, it opens the door for Trump's friends, family, and donors to cash in on insider deals. This isn't capitalism. It isn't free markets. It isn't even conservative. It's Trump using government as his personal investment arm. Here's the kicker. Trump and MAGA Republicans still scream about socialism when Democrats propose health care or student debt relief. But what Trump is doing makes Bernie Sanders look like a libertarian. This is government ownership of private business. This is taxpayer money being gambled on corporations. This is Marxist MAGA. And the fact that it's wrapped in a red hat doesn't make it any less dangerous. So the next time you hear Trump rant about socialism, remember this. He's the one pushing the biggest government takeover of private industry in U.S. history. Bailouts for billion-dollar corporations. Golden shares in steel, profit-sharing deals with chip makers, and all of it under the Trump brand of America First. But in reality, it's not America First. It's Trump first. It's insiders first. And it's taxpayers last. Because at the end of the day, this isn't free enterprise. This is state-run capitalism. This is cronyism. This is Marxist MAGA. And if it's allowed to continue, it won't just bankrupt the Treasury. It will bankrupt the very idea of American democracy.